I forget. Welcome, lovely sisters and brothers. Thank you for tuning in through Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube. Let us dive into getting a deeper understanding of what is a simulation. And I am reading from the Wes Penry book, Simulations and the Wheels of Time in Developing Worlds. The front cover you can see in the head picture. Let us dive into this. It is a short chapter. Over the last few decades, the alternative media have talked a lot about how we live in a simulation. Something that especially took off with the Matrix movie series. As usual, the mainstream media tried to debunk this and called in all sorts of scientists to do it for them. So now the winds have changed in the light of metaverse and the singularity drawing with the day nigh. Scientists, like turncoats, suddenly acknowledge that we probably live in a simulation. After all, this is not because they are a little slow in their thinking. It is because now is the time to prepare a lot of people for the new simulation that is approaching. If they want people to accept the brave new world, in this case, the singularity, the elite or elite uh, oligarchs and so on also must have us accept the concept of simulations. But there is a question few people seem to have asked themselves, thankfully, or when they have, comma, they quickly drop it because they do not have the answer. No, because sometimes an answer takes a while before it can come to you. But we are so impatient, so we demand an answer directly to come. It is simply because they do not have the complete story. I am fortunate to have had a contact from Orion, not from this world, and thus from Orion, with whom I could discuss matters for at least 5 to 6 years on an almost daily basis. I have shared much of this in the Wes Penry papers, in books, and on other media over the last 12 plus years as of this writing. So, as the reader can imagine, it is a lot of amazing new information I gathered over these years, and not everything has been published or being placed in the Wes Penry papers. If that would be the case, then these papers would have counted 5,000 pages at least. Therefore, I am releasing some things in increments as I review them, besides new information I am gathering from inside and outside of me. And on top of that, I am on a fairly regular basis reviewing and going through the correspondence my contact and I had, and it has shown to be a mighty good idea to do so because I learn something new each time. So the reader can probably relate to that. Going over materials over and over makes us notice new things in them each time, particularly if the information is layered and can be grasped on different levels depending on what state of consciousness we are currently in. I now can see many things in the material I did not see during the intense correspondence we had. constantly discussing subjects that were completely new to me more and more. I can see the genius of my contact who lives in Orion, whom I communicated with. He knew exactly what he was doing, and now I am reading to unlock a new level of understanding that I can share with you. The material in this book has to me been a game changer in some ways because I can see what I previously could only grasp in fragments. It answers many questions I have had, and all the time the answers were there before my eyes. Well, that is life in the matrix, isn't it? We learn in layers. So let us see and dive into the first topic in this chapter: real versus simulated universes. The question I was hinting at is why some say the current matrix simulation is biological, while others say it is digital. We see the digital numbers scrolling on the screen in the Matrix movies, for example, which probably made people confused. Well, I can tell you that this simulation, although based on mathematics, just like everything else, living in the matrix is not digital, it is biological. Metaverse is digital. So now we get the understanding why they wanna have us accepting this digitalness, because the metaverse is a complete digital so-called world. However, and must transmute the entire matrix into the sub-quantum world, also called the nano world, which is the greater universe, or better known as Orion. The simulation we live in is based on an illusion, but its foundation is biological. Our world is also something called the macrocosm, while the quantum, subquantum, and the nano world are all called the microcosmos. Is it not ironic, though, that what we try to see in more and more sophisticated microscopes is the real universe, teeming with life, while the universe we observe with our five senses is in actuality the false universe, a dimension void of life. When we look through telescopes, we see an amazing, beautiful universe, breathtaking. Then try to imagine that all we see is an illusion. Between quotation marks, a bad copy of the true universe, which is the nano world, which I dubbed the nanoverse. That is where life is, not here in the 4% universe. In our, between quotation marks, universe, there is only us. There is no life out there, no aliens, because the, between quotation marks, aliens are in the nanoverse, in the real universe. Save for those who visit us in 3D, incarnating in 3D bodies. Thus, there is no, between quotation marks, metaphysics. It is an obsolete term in the sense it is being used because metaphysics is the true universe. What we perceive is not the universe, but a simulation. We could almost say it is inverted. And the world we live in is metaphysical, and meta means after in Greek. And things that do not change. Our world was created after the nanoverse. And our world does not change. Only we as nanoversals, i.e. 3-unit composites, soul, mind, spirit, change. So those who have out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences are not entering the metaphysical world. They are entering the real universe, sort of real universe. In fact, they are in actuality entering the astral, which is an intermediary between quotation marks, physical matrix and the nanoverse. If you look at the MasterCard symbol, these are two circles and they overlap each other. So you can say the overlapping is the astral world, and then you get the real world, you get the astral world, and then you get this world. This is how Spirit showed me how to see this. It is like a, so to say, relay station, if you will. It is difficult to find an appropriate term for it, but it is a place of additional containment, less dense than living in a physical body, and it is also in the astral where the overlords are residing, but still denser than the nanoverse. So it's not very dense, but also not in a way very spiritual. It is really in between. When we lived in Atlantis, in what I call the second construct, we were semi-physical, which means we were still living in the lower dimensions of the Ka, the nanoverse, and our Homo sapiens bodies are what we call physical. We must consider that lowering our vibrations to descending into the dense material world of atoms always involves some level of amnesia. In this third construct, what is called the matrix, Enki, our chief genetic tinkerer, who cannot create anything from scratch because he lacks spirit, could only copy what already existed. He could choose whether to continue the experiment after Noah's flood the way it was already set up. Or he could manipulate matter and the rest of the elements even more. He chose, of course, the latter. And Noah and his sons who survived the flood were The last humans with gender-based bodies transferred over from the less dense Atlantis construct. Noah, according to records, lived for over 900 years. I would suggest that at the beginning of the second Atlantis, before the flood, we were still Namlu'u and we were androgynous. We did not procreate and we were all the same bloodline, so to say, having the same DNA mix. There was no, so to say, bloodline because there was no line. We did not procreate. This became known as the Isis-Ninurta DNA. Thus, we were still semi-physical but living in a somewhat denser environment, which was the early planet Earth. More about this later. And it was not until much later into the Atlantis construct, Enki secretly tinkered with the DNA of some humans, and both the Syrians and Enki raped the females of these early Atlantis Homo sapiens, while most humans throughout the Atlantis construct were still androgynous Namlu'u. Enki wanted to create his own experiment within the experiment, where humans had his and Isis DNA instead of Ninurta's. By doing that, he wanted to claim at least a part of the human soul group as his so-called own creation. So it could very well be that Enki and Isis tinkered with our DNA by the end of the Atlantis era, creating the first genders. And the first original Homo sapiens was Horus/Marduk, the prodigy of Osiris, who was Enki and Isis. This could be what made Ninurta so furious. It was the first attempt to contaminate the experiment. And it went wild from there. At the end, only Noah was still of the pure Enki-Isis bloodline, so Enki was eager to save him from the flood, so he could continue his own experiment afterward and almost completely erase the Isis-Ninurta DNA. And the offspring of Noah's 3 sons were more than likely tinkered with. So, in the Orion book, volume 2, I wrote about Noah's bloodline in the 3rd construct, and according to records, Ham's children were black, while Shem's children and Japheth's children were not. How can that be if they all had the same ancestors who were not black-skinned at all? This could only happen if a genetic manipulator tinkered with the DNA, perhaps to distinguish between the 3 bloodlines of Noah and keep track of them. So Enki branded, so to say, them out. So Enki branded, so to say, them. In addition, Enki programmed the descendants of Noah's sons with a false reality, which is the 3D world we live in right now. And our lifespan became much shorter. So we would not figure out too many things in each lifetime. So moreover, he, Enki, set up the grid and the dome and built also the recycling center, which we have discussed in a lot of earlier written materials. The bottom line is that what we see is a copy of 4% of the nanoverse. Not that the copy we see looks much different from the nanoverse, but it is 96% less and it is void of life. If we could travel in spaceships to other star systems in our current physical, biological bodies, we would find no life anywhere. It would look like a deserted universe. So, in a sense, astrophysicists were correct when they postulated there is no life in the universe, save only for us. So we are the only life. Still, it would only be empty when perceived with our restricted five senses. If we could shrink our bodies to nanosize, the universe would suddenly teem with life, and it would appear just as physical as things are here. But we look at life with our goggles on, just like people do when they play virtual computer games these days. And our goggles have become our eyes because our 3D world is so isolated from all other dimensions teeming with life. We are extremely hard to find on the what is known as so-called star maps. We here on Earth are the only living beings in this dimension, and it is set up this way on purpose. So let us see the next. A universe in the astral. There are many reasons Enki constructed the grid the way he did. I need to do something. Sorry, there is something going on here. Anyways, so there are many reasons Enki constructed the grid the way he did. In other writings, I have mentioned some of them. There is another reason as well. It keeps us isolated within the astral realms, preventing us from taking off the goggles. While we are trapped in our sapiens bodies, we perceive life around us through our five senses, which have their receptors in the body. I.E, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the taste buds, and the nervous system that also makes it possible to experience touch. In the astral, we lose all that, and these five senses are replaced with something else. So we can experience a different level of the matrix, I.E, the 4%, which is encapsulated within the astral. Therefore, some people during OBEs say They have encountered different worlds during their travels. Yes, they are there as illusions because the astral is just an extension of the matrix system, and we should not underestimate our own creative abilities. Many times I have discussed the power of thought, imagination, emotions, and intention, who are all the building blocks of spiritual creation, which we then can manifest in the astral in the same fashion as in the Ka, the spiritual universe. Therefore, it is completely possible to create entire worlds in the astral through our imagination, while still here on earth, and make it manifest there because it is less dense than earth. Because it is less dense than earth. So we can find between quotation marks aliens, monsters, demons, and other things we can imagine in the astral. Most of this is more than likely human creations. I sometimes use the example of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. He created an entire world, Middle-earth, with all its races. He even created languages and an entire creation story. His world became as real to the readers as this world while reading the books. Our consciousness disappeared into that world. These books have sold over 150 million copies, besides the numberless audience that watched the Lord of the Rings movies. What do you think all this created? Almost the entire world population projected images in their minds when they dug into Tolkien's world, and all these images manifested and keep manifesting in the astral. Therefore, we can expect to find the entire Middle Earth in the astral. Just as real as this world is to us, so we can visit it, meet the characters and all the rest of it, with all these projections from our mass consciousness. Middle Earth inevitably exists in the astral as a massive thought form that has taken on its own life. This is how creation works, albeit some, between quotation marks, creations in the astral are done with overlord technologies. There is nothing as real and powerful as human creativity. So now ask yourself, why is it that we can see the bodies of people around us, but we cannot see their souls? It is because the soul and the physical body are in different dimensions. The soul, and in fact the entire 3-unit composite, exists in the nanoverse, comma, not in 3D. Where the 3-unit composite exists in the nanoverse / microcosmos, it is always visible. The tiny fires that make up the soul, the avatar, live in the nanoverse. When we go to the astral, we leave the 3D realm, we take off our 3D goggles and put on our 4D goggles, and suddenly a completely new environment emerges. So long as we stay in the astral, the part of our 3-unit composite that goes there cannot see anything else but the 4% universe. And because of technological factors that only the overlords know how they work, we get the illusion of vast distances, such as the many light years between stars. Not until we go through the grid can we throw off the last pair of goggles. Then we have returned to the nanoverse and we are free from the matrix. We are in microcosmos, and the entire universe is now full of life. Of course, we will experience the universe being the same size as the universe we see with our goggles. Again, compare our 3D with a great virtual reality game. Everything in the game appears to be, between quotation marks, normal sized. Now the reader may ask themselves, how do we know the nanoverse is not another level of a greater simulation and that we still have goggles on? Well, that is a good question. So let us start by looking at the definition of simulation. Simulation, a model of a set of problems or events that can be used to teach someone how to do something, comma, or the process of making such a model. Another definition, the manager prepared a computer simulation of likely sales performance for the rest of the year. So with the above definition in mind, let us expand on this. What we have learned so far, based on my previous work, we know that in the Ka, the spirit universe, there is no matter. There the 3-unit composites and 2-unit composites who have gained access to spirit can create with their minds and manifest their creations in the cosmic water, the Ka, which scientists call so-called space. That is what real creation is all about. And that is where real creation starts. Then beings on a Ka, KHAA level can enjoy and take part in each other's creations and potentially expand on them. All right. physical training modules. This is the last part of this chapter. The developing worlds, the physical universe, are training modules, preparing young souls for what is coming. Here, newborn souls train themselves to become. Usually, this is done in soul groups. This is done in soul groups, comma, and after some time, these soul groups, so to say, graduate. And if they wish, they can leave their worlds and continue their evolution in the spirit universe known as the Ka. It is like a chicken cracking the eggshell, and suddenly a whole new universe opens. Not to be too technical, but this chicken and the egg metaphor is essentially the same thing as a soul cracking the egg of their world's limitation. And they leave the eggshell behind. So as above, so below. From there, the next level of learning begins. And thus the souls can get more insights and focus their attention on higher and higher dimensions. Eventually, they reach a point in their evolution when they realize how to use the Ka/spirit around them to create with, and they become creators. After some additional training, they can then create their own simulations and their own soul groups. And life in the universe continues to expand. Now we should be able to see that the Ka, the spirit universe, is not a simulation, it is pure spirit. Here on earth, we do not let a child become the CEO of a corporation. If the purpose of the child is to become a CEO, they must first educate themselves and go through several steps. There is no difference for newborn souls in the universe. By creating the Namlu'u, the original humans, the Queen considered changing this routine. From what I have learned of my Orion contact, she, the Queen of Orion, was unhappy with what creators in general, starting their evolution in the physical worlds, created when they later became creators themselves. So the quality of these worlds was not sufficient for the task, and the souls who developed in the physical worlds often became warlike and violent. And apparently, even when they settled down and changed their ways later in their evolution, their creations still had aspects of these traits. So by creating humans in the Ka instead of in the physical universe and creating them with spirit bodies from scratch, she, the Queen of Orion, hoped to be able to create better creators who had more compassion and empathy than many or most of the previous creators. This doesn't mean that there are wars everywhere in the developing worlds, but it seems to be more common than the goddess considers acceptable. So you can say there are maybe a bit too much beings walking around with warlike traits in them. Unfortunately, some forces came in and destroyed the Tiamat project, which was a project of the divine prime creatrix, the Queen of Orion herself. We are her creation. So these forces came in and destroyed the Tiamat project at an early stage, which eventually led us to our current matrix. So the divine prime creatrix, known as the Queen of Orion, planned to eventually stop creating soul groups in the material universe and let the physical universe dissolve after all soul groups have left one by one. After that, soul groups would only be created in the Ka, but from there on with spirit attached. However, before such a project could take root, there had to be a, between quotation marks, beta testing to see if it was possible. And that is where humankind came into the picture. And the next time we continue with this, with another chapter titled Creator Creators in the Ka and the Developing Worlds. So this is also an interesting book with a lot of valuable information in it. And I would highly recommend you to buy a copy yourselves too and start reading it. And also to re-listen to these live book videos and listen to them with your spiritual ears and thus with your spirit, and ask your spirit for more clarification and in-depth understanding about the information that is being presented to you. I want to thank you for tuning in through Facebook, through Rumble, and through YouTube. Thank you for listening along, and I wish you all a beautiful, joyful day, and filled with a lot of love, wisdom, revelations, and truth, all coming from your own spirit, and that the sun also shines today wherever you are in the world. And so let us listen to a lovely, beautiful piece of music created by Bensound. All right, see you next time.